Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Cloud-Based Mayhem. We're going to roll with these X-Alps stories for a while. The one with Kriegel was very well received, and I'm such an X-Alps junkie. It's really fun to hear these stories and behind-the-scenes stuff that most people have never heard of, and trying to dig into each of the years with some of these athletes who have done it a bunch of times and find out what went on and how things went down, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And our guest this week is Tom De Dorlodot. Other than Toma, he's done it more than anyone. He's done it 8 times, and he's in for this year in his 9th. So we go way back to 2007, and had only been around since 2003, so he just missed the first 3. And find out about what it was like when they used to use paper maps and had no tech and no GPS and much different communications. And it was, in a lot of ways, much more of an adventure and not so much a race where the athletes would wait for one another and do it together and carry a lot more gear. That didn't really change big time until Kriegel came onto the scene in 2009 and really started pushing the lightweight thing. So this is really fun to go back that far and listen to Tom's stories. And along the way, as we go through each of his races, we get into some really good advice that he has, and just some of the takeaways and some of the things he's seen, and the way he thinks about safety and how things are changing now that he has a couple kids. And yeah, I was fascinated to talk to him just to find out how he stays motivated to do these over and over and over again, because it's quite a big thing, these campaigns. Please reach out if you're digging these. Let me know. And there's a whole bunch more people I can sit down with, but X-Alps is very special to me. And if the general audience doesn't find these as intriguing, we can skip around and do some more normal shows too. But we've got a bunch of folks lined up for more of these, and if you like them, let us know. Appreciate it. So, without further delay, please enjoy this X-Alps talk and this walk and fly down memory lane with Tom De Dorlodot. Cheers. Tom, what a pleasure, man, to see you here. You're a lot more clean shaven than I am, but you're in your new place. And is it Fayal? Is that how you say it in the Azores? I visited there by boat many years ago, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we are now in Fayal. We just moved into our new house. So
congratulations.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to talk to you too, man.
Yeah, it's been a while, but I'm excited for your family in a new place. And are you both? I know you speak everything, but do you speak Portuguese as well? Is that just part of the repertoire?
Man, we are. We're learning to speak at the moment. It's still pretty basic, but we speak Spanish, so we can kind of understand, what they're saying. But the funny thing is that my son Jack is about to be 4 years old, and he goes to school. He's been going to school for 2 months, and he already speaks Portuguese. So he's going to teach us. I think it's crazy when they're so small, they learn so fast. And we understand most of it, and we have really good friends there. Also, I mean, the paragliding community in the Azores has been super welcoming. Also, it's great? Like you have a family everywhere you go. Yeah. And being a pilot, and so and there's a flying site 500 meters from my place, so I can take off there in the morning, fly on the east faces of the island, and then land in the backyard. So it's beautiful. Really enjoying it. Yeah.
And will you be there for the most part up until the race? Is that where you'll be doing most of your training? Or I know you're heading off for the Alps, I think tomorrow, but is that it sounded like that was more of a work trip? But is this home kind of year round?
Yes, this is going to be home year round. I think it's not the perfect place to train because it's still pretty small islands, and the flying conditions are good. There's always a place to fly, but it's not like you can fly long distances or stuff. But in terms of physical training, this is perfect because there are trails everywhere. People do a lot of running and hiking there, so I can train. I can cross the island. There's a trail every year called the Blue Trail, the Azores Blue Trail, where you can run distances up to 65 or 100K. So we have trails everywhere. So for just to go out and run, it's perfect. And the weather, it's pretty good all year round, so it's never really cold. But I will for sure organize a few trips to the Alps. I'm planning also to sail to the Canary Island this winter and train more in the Canaries, and then I'll go to the Alps for sure for some ski touring and mountaineering and flying, because this is the place to be, I guess. Probably in May, early May, I'll move there with my van and live in the van for like a month before the race. Yeah.
I love the food there. As I'm hearing you talk about the Azores, I always think about the sardines. I'm crazy about their sardines. They're
Yeah, man.
so delicious, and it's such a culture that's based around the ocean, which I also love. Most of our time was spent on San Miguel, and where a lot of the pilots live. And what a community too. I mean, they have that big bash every August, and it's a fantastic place. I'm jealous.
Yeah, and it feels a little bit like Europe 30 years ago. Like they are, everyone knows each other. It's a small community. In our island there's like 15,000 people, so everyone kind of knows each other. And so it's really cool. Like we made really good friends, and there are local farmers. Everything grows on this island, so we have a project of growing some fruits and vegetables and stuff. And you go down to the sea, you can go spearfishing or fishing, catch a fish, put it on the fire. The meat is great also because they have cows and they are grass fed all year round and stuff. So it's yeah, quality of life, being out in nature every day and close to the ocean. And we thought that it was a good place for our kids, basically. So
Raising the
that's
kids.
pretty much why we moved there. And I still travel a lot, so it's a good place for me to come down and just land and sit back and just take some time for me to be with my family and quiet. And yeah, so we really enjoy. I mean, I'll be able to tell you more about it in a few months because I've only been there for just a few months, but I love it. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Congratulations. That feels good to have a place. Well, hey, we're going to take a walk down memory lane, Tom, with your X-Alps. We just did this with Kriegel last week, and I'm going to do this with more of you who have done a bunch of these races. Going to sit down with Hansa next week and do this. So what I wanted to start with before we get into your first, which was 2007, no one's done it more except Toma. So you're next in line with 8. This will be your 9th. I think I have that right. And
Yeah.
but before we get into that 2007 race and hear your stories of each of your events, which I know is going to be taxing on your memory with having done 8 of them, but I wanted to see, usually this time of year is, when I'm not doing this one, so I'm not doing it this year, but usually this time of year, I'm all well into the training pretty hard. And I've been just kind of thinking this year, not doing it, how difficult it would be to motivate to, get that fit again. I think some people like Kriegel and those, they just kind of stay fit because they're doing so much hike and fly racing. But, you're spending a lot of time with your family and sailing and the search projects and a lot of other things. And so with the race on the horizon and it being your 9th, do you have any trouble with getting ready or getting motivated? Do you worry about much going into it from the physical side, or is it you've done it so many times you'll just you'll be ready?
I think it's a really good question, and that's very interesting because I mean, everyone has a different way to look at things. But for me, it's like it's every 2 years, and it feels like every 2 years I start to train again. A year before the event, and then after the race I take some month off and I don't do anything. And it also helps my body to recover. I never got injured like in training or anything like that. And I don't feel like I still feel pretty fresh after so many years doing it. And I do think that it's also because I take a little bit of time to just do nothing. But I
Yeah.
mean, professional athletes will tell you now it's better to train all the time and stuff. But I'm not sure about that. It's good to also disconnect and do other things, or maybe focus more on the flying or go on other adventures and change your mindset a little bit, and then come back and start to train again. But in terms of motivation, and it's difficult. I would say, of course, some days you are super motivated because the weather is great and you have a good friend to go train with, or so you're having a good time, you're in a good mood, you want to train. But many days also you're not motivated and you just want to stay inside or do something else. And that's where discipline comes in and routine, and with the years, I kind of understood how to work that out. Like I need to just set a plan and also have people looking at my training, like have a professional trainer, and work on my discipline and my routine. It's like, okay, every day, wake up, go for your run, do your meters, go train, go flying, and work on the routine. And so I organize my trainings with friends. I say, okay, on Wednesday I go cycling with this guy. On Thursday I go running with my wife. On Friday I do something else. I'm trying to keep, busy and motivated. Um, but having said that, some of the races where I came the strongest physically and really well trained were maybe not my best races. So, it's not only about being fit and strong and physically prepared and trained. It's also in your head and the strategy and your team. And it's so many things that you have to work on. So some athletes, I think, maybe focus too much on training, when actually there's a lot more going on in those races, as you know. And so,
Yeah.
so we will see. This year, I approach it a bit differently. I think you're also you have also a daughter, and like it's for me. I want to spend time with my family. I want to work on other projects. I want to do other things. I'm not a monomaniac. I'm not 100% on X-Alps. X-Alps is part of my life and part of my career, but I don't wake up in the morning only thinking about X-Alps, even if I love the adventure and I love the whole thing and the race and stuff. So I'm going to be training and I'm going to push myself as much as I can because I love it. But this is not for me the most important thing. If I should put it this way, maybe. Yeah.
How have the optics going into, say the 2023 race changed because of your family and children compared to in the past? Has it just mellowed your view? Has it changed how you approach it? I mean, I know in the last race, you're always, I think, you make very good decisions, and you've always been more, I think, conservative than some have, with your eye on the long game. If you get hurt, you make a bunch. You don't have the long game, and so in this last race, there was definitely a lot of really hairy weather, and you chose to sit it out sometimes or walk down, or it was just beyond your comfort level. From what I understand, I was way behind you at that point. I was just
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
the messages. But is that because of the family, or is that just who you are?
No, I think there's two things. I think the first thing is that my approach to competition has changed. I like to compete, because it's fun and I like the adventure and I like to be with my friends out there and I'm there for the adventure. But if I really think about it, like to just go there to try to beat someone and be the strongest, somehow I don't know why it doesn't make sense anymore. I guess it's an ego thing, which I understand, and people want to be the first and the fastest and it's cool. I mean, we all approach races with different state of mind and mindset. But I used to be very competitive. I used to compete and I used to always compare myself to other pilots and I used to try to be the fastest and the highest and this and this and this. But then now I realize, okay, well, it's great, but does it really matter at the end of the day? And the answer to me, it's no. It doesn't really matter. I don't give a shit. And so this is the thing. It's interesting because um, I wake up in the morning in the middle of the race and I want to push myself and I want to have big flights and I want to enjoy my day and stuff. But I don't really care if I'm in front of someone or behind someone. There's always going to be a winner. There's always going to be a loser. But does it really matter so much? And I think we have to think about this because the whole society works like this. It's all about competition. Who's got the bigger car and the biggest house and the biggest whatever? Does it really matter? What is it? Is it more important than have beautiful experiences or have a nice conversation with one of the other athletes or meet some people on the way or discover new areas or learn things about yourself? So for me, it changed. in a way. In the last years, I cannot tell you exactly when, but I can feel that now I'm not into, this ego thing anymore of trying to be, the best and the first, and maybe I was never built to be one of those guys. So that's one thing, and the other thing is for sure the risk. um, it's dangerous, man. This race, and we've seen people doing crazy things, and I've seen it with my eyes. Some guys almost kill themselves in front of me, and they do this, and it's just to maybe gain one position in the ranking. And I'm like, why would you do that? Like, why would you take off in the middle of a thunderstorm when you can just sit here and live another day, and
Yeah.
you'll have other days to fly, and it's a. And so we've seen accidents, we've seen people getting hurt, but we also have seen many very tricky and very shitty situations where they just saved themselves, in the very last moment because they were lucky and because they have a lot of experience, obviously. But I'm like, does it really, is it really interesting, or is it what we want to show to the world also and to the people who follow the race, that we can just go and fly in any conditions and take risk and just don't give a shit about our lives, and now that I have kids, and I feel that I'm responsible for them, and I want to be there for them, when they grow. And so I had my fair share of accidents. I broke my back once, I broke my foot, I had accidents during X-Alps, so I've been through this. But now I think about it differently, and I just think, okay, risks management is important to me. Last time I think maybe I could have gained a few places in the ranking, maybe get into the top 10 if I had risked more. But then, okay, oh, I'm number 8 instead of being number 11. Great, and what? And I risked my life. So for me, it's more about telling a good story and sharing it with friends and learning things that I can share later on, and just learn to be a better pilot and learn to be a safer pilot, and also try to convey this message to the to the pilots who are following us, because a lot of people are looking up to the Red Bull athletes and to the Red Bull X-Alps athletes, and we have a responsibility somehow to show the way, and show that you can be, you can do big flights, but you can do it safely. You can prepare yourself to do those flights, and that sometimes we should all leave our ego aside a little bit, and just say, hey guys, take it easy. What matters is to have a good time. Let's forget about the kilometers a little bit. Let's forget about the speed. Let's just enjoy flying. And that's important, especially now in a world where it's all about social medias and the track and records and stuff. I think it's interesting to maybe step back a little bit and see it differently. But that's my point of view only, and I'm happy to see that some guys like Aaron Kliegel and the guys in front are really pushing, and their competitiveness is really inspiring everyone. I don't want to criticize anyone. I'm just saying that I'm in another place at this stage of my life, I think. Yeah.
Sounds like a pretty good place. Well, let's go to a completely different place because you've been at this a
Mm-hmm.
while. 2007. First, how old were you? And remind everybody of the route, because you didn't start that year where we start now, and you certainly didn't end it where we end now. So take us back. And as I said before, the top of the show, what we'd love to hear is, and this is going to be taxing on your memory, but a really high point, something that you remember that was just a beautiful experience, and maybe the opposite of that, which often when you look back, the bad ones are high points too. The mistakes are great things, but maybe something you remember from that race that was tough.
Yeah, I mean, this was one of the craziest moment of my paragliding career was to take part in the first Red Bull X-Alps. It was in 2007, and I just turned 21 years old, so I was pretty
Oh,
young.
wow.
And I remember when I subscribed, I thought I'm just gonna subscribe, and just to be there and to let them know that I exist. And so maybe in 2 years they'll take me, they'll. But I didn't really expect to be selected, to be honest. And so, but it was fine to me. Like, I was competing in the Belgian Championship. I was doing nice flights, and I had a good level and stuff. But it was had been watching the DVDs of the 2003 and 2005, races, and those guys were my heroes, and I was super young. So there, I received an email one day and saying, "Hey, Tom, you're selected for the Red Bull X-Alps." And I, whoa, okay, that's something. And so I had no sponsors at the time. I was paying everything myself. I had a small company. I was doing aerial photographies with a paramotor. And on Saturday morning, I would go from door to door, knocking at the doors and say, "Hey, I took a photo of your house. Would you like to buy it?" And that's how I was making like my pocket money, if I can say. And so I raised a little bit of money with that, but I was on such a low budget. Like I think I did the whole race with 1,500 euros or something like that.
Oh my God,
I
are
was
you kidding
sleeping in
me?
my car. No, I didn't have a van, and I was it was super small van, like a post office van, like for the small one. So I had to sleep with the doors open in the back, and I was getting wet every time it would rain, you know. And my supporter, I kind of told my supporter, "Hey man, can you come and help me? You know, just have to bring me food once a day or something. You know, the rest of the day you can stay in the campsite." You can go to the swimming pool. You do your thing, you know. I and so my supporter will say goodbye in the morning, and he would go and visit villages and towns, and he'd go on his little cultural trip, you know. And in the evening, he would come back and give me food. So I remember I remember being in a line at the supermarket to buy food. I was standing like I would be in the line to buy an ice cream in Italy, and wait for 15 minutes so that it would be my turn to get my ice cream, you know, because I had no food. I lost 11 kilograms on that race
Oh
in 10
my
days. Be-
God.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
You should see the photos. It's crazy. I remember Michel Ferrer took a photo of me and I looked like so skinny. One day in Merano Valley, I blacked out because I didn't have food for so long. I was hiking in the fields and my supporter was not coming, and so, but you have to think, I mean, we had no GPSs at the time. We had no smartphones. We had paper maps. We didn't know shit about the Alps. Like we were really like trying to find our ways, but we would stop in villages and say, "Hey, how do we go to the top of that mountain?" And then maybe someone will take us. I remember traveling a lot with Julien Wirt. He was one of my best mate on this race. He's a French pilot, super talented, one of the
yeah,
best
one of the
pilots in
best
the
in the
world.
world.
And we and we one day we got lost in above I think above Bolzano. We got lost and we walked for like hours and hours and hours, like really the whole afternoon. And then at the end of the afternoon, we came back almost to the point where we started five hours before, and it started raining. It started raining, and we opened an umbrella, and we had one umbrella for the two of us. So we were the two of us, two Red Bull athletes, like a Red Bull X-Alps athletes, sitting just below the umbrella. And some days my supporter would didn't find me in the evening. I had to knock at doors and sleep at some locals ask, "Hey, can I sleep in your house?" So that was my first experience, but it went really good. Like, can you imagine that the first day of the Red Bull X-Alps in 2007, because we didn't really know, we were not prepared. We had My supporter came with a McDonald's menu for in the evening and say, "Hey Tom, here I found this McDonald's French fries, burger," and yeah, we were just so inexperienced. I mean, now I can say it. It's been 20 years almost, but I didn't have at the time. I don't think I had enough experience to take a race like this. But it was pretty much the same for most of the field. I mean,
Yeah.
those guys, like, I remember that year the Russian guy came with a backpack that was around 20 kilograms. And I remember him showing his backpack to the race director, Steve Cox, and Steve said, "Okay, that's a good joke, but can you show me your flying gear now?" And the Russian said, "This is my flying gear," like,
Oh
and
my
and I was
God.
like, "No, but do you have anything like lighter?" And he had a Gradient SR7 that was maybe 7 kilograms, and a Woody Valley harness that was 12 or 13 kilograms. He was on 20 kilograms backpack,
Full on
and he
comp
was
here.
and his point was, no, but I fly better with this, high performance harness and a lot of weight, so a bigger glider. And it was the way he was, like, there were people like that. in 2007,
Wow.
you know. So so it was a different game, it was a different race. We would fly with sleeping bags, with a little gas stove to be able to cook in the mountains when we would land. You know, sometimes someone will sit on the mountain for one day without even moving, waiting for the next day to be better, to get better weather, you know. So it was a different approach, and then from there it only went faster and faster and faster. But the race was, I was doing really well. I was in the top 10 for the whole race. So for being so young and, you know, so inexperienced, it was good. I didn't need to sleep much, you know, because at the time it was 24/7, so we didn't have to stop by night. And that was crazy. But
And you guys
after, at
that
the end
year,
of the race,
you started at the Dockstein, right? And then didn't you go down to the Marmolada? You went down to Italy, and then where?
mhm, yeah.
Then back up to
Oh man,
Switzerland,
I
right?
don't exactly remember, but we had, yeah, I think at the time it was like 4 turn points or something. It was so much
Yeah.
easier, and some people would go south and some people would go north, and you would never see them. You know, like the distances between the athletes were huge. But yeah, we went to Marmolada. I remember flying with Vincent Sprungly, going to Marmolada. Vincent was flying a harness without back protection, like extremely light. And I remember when he prepared his thing, he also went to Super, and he took the smallest rescue parachute ever built, like XX small, like extra, extra small, that if he had to throw it, he would have break his back for sure. He had no back protection. And it's just when they ask, "Hey, do you have a rescue parachute?" Yeah, it's here. And it was like really super small. And we were all using like uncertified helmets. Like we had bicycle helmets, you know, like extremely light, that if you crash, you wouldn't be protected. And no one gave a shit about it. We were all flying prototypes and gliders that didn't even exist on the market, you know. So it's good. It changed, you know, and now it's a lot safer, and you know the organization, everything is a lot more organized. And but yeah, we went to Marmolada, and I remember like the weather was crazy. We flew quite fast, but still it was taking a lot more days. I think that race lasted like 13 days or something. And sadly, I had an accident towards the end. Like I was getting close to Mont Blanc, and my glider collapsed, and I crashed. I was on full speed bar, very close to the ground, but the glider collapsed. I crashed, and I broke my hand. And I wanted to continue. I said to the organization, "Yeah, it's okay. You know, I have just put a cast, and I'm just gonna continue." But they say, "No, no, no, you cannot fly like this." And it was good. It was a good decision, because the next day I woke up and my back was blue, it was good to go. So and from there I never stopped. I went 2009, 2011, 2013, 15, 17, 19.
Yeah, and you've
Yeah,
had
all the races until.
we'll get to these. You've had a couple other injuries with that are X-Alps related, but okay, well, so that was a great start, Tom. That was fantastic. I remember that was Nate's first and only X-Alps in 2007. His supporter was his wife, and their I think Ripley was 2 years old, and Nate's dad. That was they had a camper van that they rented, and
I
Ripley,
remember.
the
Yeah,
daughter, hated Nate's dad. They didn't like each other at all, and she would, he would call her at some point, sometime during the race, and say, "Hey, can you bring me a sandwich?" And his wife would go, "Nate, we're at the pool, we'll see you tonight." And then every night, to find him, she would have to call Red Bull headquarters and find out where he was. Because they, like you said, because they didn't have GPS, or they didn't have the tracking.
yeah,
So
yeah.
just
We
totally
would
on
give
his
the
own.
name of a village and say, "I am waiting at the church of this village," and of course we had no extra batteries. The phones were ran off. And I mean, it was good that other teams were around, and it was a lot more. I mean, it's still the case. I think teams are still helping each other a lot, but at the time it was really like you needed to be able to count on other teams, because
Mm.
if not, you would just die on the side of the road. So the teams would always stop and say, "Hey, do you need water? Do you need food and stuff?" And but after a while, you wouldn't see anyone. Like people would sit here and there and being lost, and it was a bit messy, but very interesting, and
Way
like
more of an
extremely
adventure than a
extremely
race, it
interesting.
seemed like back then. I mean, it seemed a
Man,
lot more of
and
a.
Yeah, and at the time I was really short on money, and so I remember when I talked to, it was my first sponsor. Basically, I got a glider for free from Gradient. They say, hey, we want to support you, and so I was like, okay, great. But I was just in between two sizes, and so I thought, well, you know. For the X-Alps, because I'm light, my harness is gonna be light and stuff. I'm gonna take I should take a smaller glider, but for the rest of the year, it's better if I have the bigger size. So I just thought, okay, I'm just gonna take the bigger size, and I'm just gonna take ballast with me. And so here I was, because I couldn't afford to have two gliders. So here I was. I had those bags to like the shower, the showers that you use. You fill the bag like a black bag with
Yeah.
with water, and it's a shower, like a camp shower basically. I had one of those in my harness, in my back when I was flying, and as I was losing so much weight during the race, I had to put more and more water, and still I felt really light. And so on the first day, on the taking off on Dachstein, I was on top of the Dachstein, and the wind was blowing super strong, and I'm like, shit, I'm here, I need some ballast. So I'm starting to fill my harness with a little bit of water, and then snow inside the bag, and then a few stones. I put a few stones in my harness, which is really something you should never do. And then I took off and I started flying backwards because my glider was a bit too big.
Oh my
And so I
God.
was looking down at Dakshan, and I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna be the stupid pilot who flies backward above Dakshan because the wind is too strong, and I'm maybe gonna break my legs or something. So I pushed the speed bar as much as I could, and slowly, 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 I started to cover distance. But it took ages to get out. I was super high, but it took ages to escape from this place, and it was very scary, and it was funny at the same time. And when I arrived in at the end of the race, my glider was really way too big for me and for my weight, so I should have go for the smaller size.
Isn't that
But
the
yeah.
one that isn't that the race that Vincent Sprungley, that was that amazing footage of him being launched with a rope? Was that 2007? Remember, on the Dachstein, it was
um
really windy and somebody held him with a rope, and he, until he got away from him and then let go.
yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it took off from the top. Yeah, we all
Yeah.
went down a little bit and took off a little bit lower. And I think, yeah, that's what happened. Yeah, that
Crazy.
was sketchy, man. If you look at the footage of those
Oh,
years,
so sketchy.
first of all, like the gliders were prototypes. They were sketchy gliders, like, and those guys, they're just on the edge all the time and pushing. Actually, I was there when Vincent hit a cable. I think it was that year. He was flying and he didn't see a cable. He hit the cable. Um, but yeah, Vincent was also a really good friend. I spent a lot of time with him. And at the time the life tracking system was not so good. It was nothing like what we have today. And I remember one day we went to sleep like somewhere near a village, and it was quite a big wall just next to us. And then my mom calls me and says, "Hey, why do you sleep in the middle of a cemetery?" And actually, the life tracking was showing us right in the middle of the cemetery, but like a big one. So, like, why would you sleep there? And it was. But Vincent was a really nice traveling companion and a really good pilot, but he was taking a lot of risk. It was really full
Yeah, I
on.
can't imagine
Yeah,
flying that thing without any protection or reserve or.
nothing.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, so
we he didn't have
2000.
an he didn't have even have a cocoon. Like, he didn't have a cocoon. He had just a
God.
line, a paragliding line, and he was flying like that, super light, like no cocoon, nothing. And he
God.
was flying fast. He flew like flights of 180 k's, which at the time was something really. Yeah,
Wow. Amazing.
yeah, yeah.
So 2009, you go back for more. That was Kriegel's first year. I don't remember much from 2009 because I was flying then, but the first one I really watched very closely was 2011. So tell us about 2009.
Yeah, 2009 was also extremely interesting because at the time still there were no limits. You could run all night long, and so I had been training my sleep. I could really go for 22 hours a day almost. Like I was sleeping 3 hours a day or something. I had only one supporter. It was at the time where we would only have one supporter in our teams. Everyone. No one had teams like what we have today with 6, 7 guys, 2 or 3 cars. We would have one car and one supporter. And so my supporter was a really good friend, and but he was more tired than I was because I would never sleep. And and I had this technique. It was really funny. We had a bit more of like a bit more logistic with us, and I had one of those 2 seconds tents, like from Decathlon,
Yeah.
the tent that you throw in and it opens, and so we had one of those tents in the car, and when I would need to sleep, I would just open it next to the road and just crash. And I remember I was following Andy Frucher. He was the Italian. He was a strong guy, and I was following him. And I would fake, in the evening, late at night, I would just throw the tent next to my car, and there the Italian would come and drive nearby and see the tent, and they would say to the Andy, "Hey Andy, Tommy's went to sleep. You can stop," because he was
You
maybe
were
one or
faking
two
him out?
kilometers in front of me. So Andy would stop, and I would just kind of sneak around the tent and start walking again. So, but we would always wait for him to set the tent, and we would do that 3 or 4 times because, of course, someone will call him and say, "Hey, go again! Tommy's on his feet. Tommy's hiking again.
Oh
Keep
my
going." So
God.
he would go again, and we would do that like all night long, throwing the tent and just laughing at the Italians, and until the moment where he would just crash and stop and say, "Okay, this is it." And but my strongest memory in 2009, and this is one of the strongest memory I have from all the X-Alps that I've took part in. It was with Julien Wirtz. We were near Zermatt, and actually I flew out of Zermatt the day before, so I was already in the valleys valley, in the big valley, and I was going
Uh-huh.
towards Mont Blanc, and I was in the 10th position, and then Julien was maybe, I think he was like 30 kilometers in my back, behind me, and the weather was horrible. So I was like, okay, this is it. I have the 10th position, no big deal, this is good. I'm happy to be in the top 10. That's it. But then I don't know how he did it, but in the morning the sky was gray, like it was almost raining, and he took off and flew 30 Ks. I don't know, like don't ask me how he did it, but he did it. He flew in those really crappy conditions and landed 2 kilometers behind me.
Wow.
And there we were all super motivated to be, I wanted to keep the 10th position and he wanted to get into the top 10. So he started running after me, and we are in the valleys and it's flat and it's 100 kilometer of flats basically, like, or maybe not 100, but I think until Martini it's like
It's a
50 or
long
something. So
ways. Yeah.
we start going for 50K, and we run and we run and all day long. And at the end of the day, maybe around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I call him because he's a good friend, and I'm like, "Hey Julian, how are you doing, man? Yeah, good. And you? Yeah, yeah, good." We try both kind of faking it, like we were all destroyed, and both of us were super tired. And I try something, and I say, "Hey, Gina, what do you think if we, what about we stop for an hour, at the same time, we get some rest, we maybe we eat something, we change shoes and and socks and whatever, we take an hour and then we go again." And he says, "Yeah, let me think about it. I call you back." So I'm like, okay, I think he's gonna accept. It's a good deal. We both stop, and we take a bit of rest. And then he calls me back and say, "Hey Tom, yeah, I'm gonna get you, man. I'm feeling strong. I'm not gonna stop. You're gonna fall down. You're gonna die." It was really like it was playing with me, but it was so fun. And then I started to say, "No, man, no, you're not gonna get me. I'm gonna run faster." But like we were both laughing at each other, but we were going for it. And so we started running again. And I was so exhausted that night that I fell asleep walking. I crashed on the road, like I fell to my face, boom. I almost broke my nose, and but I kept on going. I kept on going all night long. And then we arrived above Martini on the col, on the, I think it's called the Focla Pass or something, or one of those. And
Yeah.
and I'm on top there, and it's 8 in the morning, and I'm like, shit. Now I'm gonna fly down, but he's gonna be here at 9:30 when the first thermals come, and maybe he gets a lift, and then flies above me, but I cannot wait for him here. It was just the wrong timing for me. So I fly down, I pack my things, and I start to run like crazy. And then I see him an hour later flying and getting close to me and catching up with me. And I'm like, no, in the very last moment, the race would stop at 10 or something, because it was 24 hours or 48 hours after the first one. So we had 1 hour left, and he landed just maybe 500 meters behind me. But my bag was packed and I was full on. It was my last breath, until my last breath. So I kept on running and running and running. And then he called me and he said, "Hey, Tom, you got it." And I remember he was crying. He was crying and he said, "Tom, you have this congratulations. You have the 10th position." And there, I don't know what happened, but my brain just shut off and I fell um, on the side of the road, and I couldn't stand up anymore. I couldn't walk. My supporter had to come and carry me to go all the way to Chamonix, because I just had covered, and we had covered 120 kilometers in one push nonstop with the backpack. So we were smashed. I think it's still the record now of the longest distance ever made in 24 hours in the X-Alps, because it was just nonstop. I mean, now it's not possible anymore. But and this is one of my strongest memory, because you realize that your limits are way way behind what you think it is. Way behind. Yeah, that's super interesting about X-Alps. But I couldn't walk for 3 days, I think, after that, after running so fast and with backpack and everything. But it was still one of my strongest memory, and I went into the top 10 that year also, so it was good.
I think one of the greatest buzzes of the race for me has been, and this has been in all of them at some point, is you have these moments where you cannot believe what your body is doing. You cannot believe that it can keep going, and most of the time you feel good doing it. You're okay. You're just charging and charging and charging, and you think, God, how is this possible? It's a real buzz. I mean, and there are times where it just hurts, but boy, that's an addictive thing when it's just keep going.
It is, and what's interesting is, if you only talking about sleep, for example, if you sleep 3 hours a night for the next 4 days, and even if you do nothing and you stay at home sitting in your couch, you're gonna be exhausted. But for whatever reason, you're in the X-Alps and you just go and wake up in the morning and you're fresh and you go for it and you just want to go for more. And I think there's the adrenaline, the kick, the love of adventure, the whole community is kind of carrying you also, and pushing. But it's extremely interesting, and I think it's also because you've put so many hours preparing, and it's a long process, and so your mind is prepared for this, and you know what you're here for. And but this is interesting. This is really the X-Alps difficult moments. It's something that I always use during my when I go through difficult times, even during the day, whatever happens, I always think about those moments. Like, okay, remember the time that you hiked 120K with Julien Wirtz in your back, or remember the day you did 6,000 meter positive, or those kind of days that we think we were not able to do those things, but we are, and we all are. That's the interesting part, is that we can all do this. Everyone can do it. Training and preparing and putting the energy into that. And so the limits are way beyond what we think, and that's very interesting. And that's what the X-Alps showed us. And also, if you look at the history of X-Alps, because we're going down memory lane now, it's interesting to see that the whole sport also has evolved. If you tell me in 2007 that you can cover the whole distance in 8 days, 4 years later, I would say, man, impossible. And now we're covering more distance, a lot more, because in 2007 it was 800 kilometers. Now we're 1,200 kilometers or something, which is crazy. And we're doing it faster. So it's quite incredible.
The level of professionalism, I mean, even from my first, which was 2015, which we're not even to yet with you, and now it's remarkable how much faster everything, like you're talking about the logistics and the apps. I mean, we've got apps to handle everything that you didn't have in 2007, for everything, for our supporters to know where we are and to communicate. And I mean, we've got everything at our fingertips. And but all the teams are using it, and it's remarkable how fast it has gotten. It's you know, I always say,
Yeah.
you know, in 2015 you could make big mistakes and still totally be in the game. You know, you could make moves, and it just seems like that window evaporates a little bit more with every race. You know, mistakes just cost,
Yeah.
and it's pretty hard to get it back.
Yeah, I can give you an example. In 2009, I was supposed to fly. I was getting into a valley, and I was supposed to fly left, and I went right. So I was flying in the wrong direction, really, like for at least 3 or 4 kilometers. And then I got a message on my phone, saying, "Hey Tom, why are you flying this direction?" And I was sure I was going the right way, but it was just not. And you're so tired. And at the time, we didn't have those apps, and we were just on paper maps. Paper maps. As I was just saying, it was the first Garmin GPSs with very basic maps, and so we were trying to figure it out. But it was really the beginning. Now you have everything on your iPhone, and it's incredible. And as you say, the communication system. I mean, even things like WhatsApp to send your position on the moment, or to communicate with your team, or all the different apps that we use. It's a game changer for sure. Yeah, it's a lot more easier. Even like yeah, if you need to find a food or whatever for the team. I mean, but what's been interesting in those years is that also no one knew about X-Alps. We were
Mm.
going through towns, and no one would ever come and see you. No one knew. Like, what is he doing with his backpack? And now, everywhere you go, there are some locals that want to hike with you, or show you the way, or fly with you, or bring you some food and stuff. We get a lot more help from the locals than we used to get before. We didn't get any help, and no one knew about X-Alps. Now, I mean, there's a high chance if you go into a village somewhere in Austria and say,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm doing the X-Alps," I'm pretty
They'll
sure that
have you
someone
on.
will
They'll have your
open
picture on
his
your
door.
phone as you walk up, and yeah, it's just
Yeah, yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
remarkable.
Yeah,
Okay, 2011, you
yeah,
were as Toma ran that one pretty much. He was second. I think only two people got in, Kriegel and then Toma, and the weather was awful. That was a tough year, wasn't it?
yeah. The weather was really horrible. A lot of rain. And I was starting to get good at hiking all day long. We were starting to also understand how to train physically better. So all the athletes were getting stronger, and getting closer to what Kokonia was doing, what Toma was doing at the time. We would hike all day in the rain, so that was really hard. Yeah, I remember that year. And what I remember also, it was interesting because at the end of the race, I think that year my brother was my supporter, and he didn't know anything about paragliding. Like, he had never heard of paragliding. He was about to get married, and we thought, well, this is a cool experience. This is something we should do once in our life. Do it together as brothers, and so let's do it together. And but I remember, like, we even to open my glider on the ground, on top of a mountain, he couldn't do it. Like, he would do it upside down, and because he didn't know anything about flying. So that was interesting. But yeah, we had a really good race. The end of the race was really hard for me. I remember, because we were flying with Clément Latour, and we were quite in good position. I think we were 5 and 6 or something like that, or 7. And we arrived in Val Thorens, and the clouds were covering the top of the mountain, the ridge, and so we couldn't cross to the other side and fly down on the other valley where everyone was, like all the other pilots, Ferdi and all those guys. They were just down there. So we landed on top, and I decided to land on top and start to hike. And guys, like, I think it was Honza, was way behind us in the morning, but he decided to go through a national park. Uh, and we, as because Clément is French, and I know many French pilots and stuff, we said we have to go around the national park. At the time, it was not forbidden by the race, but it was
Yeah.
still, a little bit on the edge, and it was forbidden by the authorities. And I don't know, Anza took the risk and flew above us, and got into the top 10. And then Clément took off and flew into the clouds. And then I was there, and I was like, I just don't want to fly into the clouds. And so I was sitting there and couldn't fly, and then the wind got too strong to fly down, and then it was the end of the race. So there I was, 11th instead of 10th. Onza just flew over me a minute before the end. Like it was really 2 minutes before the end of the race. So he got into the top 10, like the very last moment. And and for me at the time, I was still on low budget, so I was really trying to be into the top 10 because it would help to get a little bit of money to pay for the race. And so it was those years, and then I had to walk down 2,000 meters, and it
Oh,
was the race was done, it was finished, but I had no other way to go down, so I walked 3 hours more when everyone was celebrating and stuff. It was really hard,
oh,
but
brutal.
but an amazing experience. And on the first night, I went into it was I landed near the Dachstein, and on the first night my brother couldn't find me. He couldn't find me, and it was, I think, 11 p.m. or something, and he couldn't find me. He couldn't find me. All the access were closed and stuff. So I just went to a house and I knocked at the door, and some drunk guys opened, and they were like 3 or 4 guys, like hunters, I think, and they were totally wasted, and they started to sing, and so I was like, okay, this is not gonna work. Thank you. They gave me a little bit of food, but then I found a place to crash, and I slept basically in my glider, on the side of the road, and wait for the next day to go to Dachstein and fly down. Um, but those were really hard races, yeah, really really difficult ones. But one of the things that my best memory for sure in this race was when we arrived next to, it was close to the Marmolada. I think the Dolomites it was still a turn point in Italy, and I was with Michael Gebert, I think. No, I'm sure I was with Michael, and we were a big group of people, like between number 6 to 12 or something. We were all together on the takeoff in the morning, and we were on the good timing. The takeoff was beautiful and stuff. And then I looked at Michael, and we were looking at the Trecime, those three big
Yeah.
pillars, those mountains. And we were like,
Beautiful.
wow, that would be a dream to take off there, but you have to hike maybe an hour more, but that would be something, man, to take off at the foot of those mountains. And so we start looking at it, and it was like, let's go, man. Let's just go. So we kind of discreetly, we didn't say anything to the others. We kind of disappeared, and we started to hike fast, and we arrived at the foot of those pillars. And it was funny because we were both sponsored by Volkswagen, by Gradient, and by Peak Performance at the time. So we were like dressed exactly the same. Like we had the same logos on our gliders. We had the same gliders. We had the same clothes. It's funny. And we even looked the same a little bit. So we were there, and we're like, okay, let's go now. And we took off, and we got so lucky because the rest of the group was in the shadow, and they couldn't get out. And we took off, and we went like skyrocket into like to cloud base directly. We flew above the Trecime. The view was amazing, and then we flew away, and we left them maybe at 80 kilometers behind. At the end of the day, we
Whoa.
were number 5, maybe number 5 and 6 or something. So we were in really good position, just because, for the beauty of it, just
Wow.
because we wanted to see this Trecime from above. I really love that, because we decided to do it not for, we could have just stayed with the others saying, hey, we're a big group, we'll fly all together and stuff, but we didn't. It was not even a better takeoff, or at least it didn't look like, but it was just we wanted to do that.
Huh.
And the experience was amazing, like soaring on those big pillars and then fly out. And we landed in Bolzano, I think, this evening, and then we got out, and the next day we were way in front of the others. So that was a good move.
Wow, that's a good
Yeah.
memory. Do you, when you're you kind of reminiscing and thinking back on these, does it make you think of a headspace or a place you have found mentally that really works in this race? I mean, it seems like more. Um, I know one of my failings in the race has often been that I'm trying too hard. I forget to be a hike and fly pilot, and I think too much about course line. But I just, I get in this mode where I almost forget that I know what I'm doing. That you just, when you're,
Yeah.
I'm not, in other words, I'm not in the zone. I'm not in flow. I'm
Yeah.
fighting it, and instead of just letting it go and letting it work out.
Yeah. Yeah. This is very interesting, because that's what I've learned from Ferdi. Ferdi van Schelven is one of my best friend, and he's that this kind of pilot who he takes his own decisions, and he does his own thing, and he works on intuition and instinct, and some way it's kind of magical, but it takes decisions and it works, and he does things differently and it works, and you always look at him like, how did you pull that off, and it
Yeah.
just doesn't follow the crowd, and so I used to be a follower. Like, I used to kind of look at the French guys that I knew better. I would, in my first race, for sure, in 2007 and 2009, I would just look at nationalities. I would say, hey, we're in Italy, let's look at what Andy Frucher is doing.
Interesting.
We are in France, let's look at what the French guys, or we are in Germany or in Austria. I would always do like that because they knew someone who knew someone. The paragliding schools were around, helping and stuff. So even some of the guys, I remember Andy Frucher once even stopped his live tracking in the morning so that we couldn't see his secret takeoff, so they would do things like that. I mean, he knows I know, and we know he knows. And so, but it was this kind of things, so, but then I've learned from Ferdi, um, that it's always better to take your own decision. And if you make a mistake, that's your own mistake, and that's your problem. And you cannot find any excuses. And I feel better like this too now. And so now I try to do my own thing, and take my own lines, and decide for myself. And even with that mindset, I can see that sometimes I get influenced, and most of the time it's by my team. And your team, they are on the ground and they want you to be fast, and they think they have a better idea, which is sometimes it's true, but sometimes you should just do your thing, and by doing your thing, you learn. Maybe you make a few mistakes, but then you improve, and then you can come back stronger, and then you can always reflect on it. And so now this is the way I see it. I just work on, I try to get in the zone, as you say. I try to get in the flow state, and I try to listen. And one of my strategy now is, I always say, if you want to be fast, you have to go slow. Is we have to think a little bit more. Sometimes you want to rush into a next move. You're like, okay, let's not lose time. Bam, 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 let's go. But if you take 5 minutes of your time to just sit, and really think about what is the best option, and measure a little bit what the pros and cons, and then it makes a difference. And at the end of the day, those 5 little minutes that you've lost just thinking a little bit better about the next move, it makes all difference for sure.
It's
So,
interesting to
and
hear you
then
say that
I
it's
used to
often
go
influenced.
too fast. Yeah.
It's interesting to hear you say it's often influenced by your team. We just had Aaron Duragati out here for the X Red Rocks, and after he just dominated. He was incredibly strong, and after the race, he and I got to spend quite a bit of time just chatting. And he he he's had a big year. He did the huge flights in Pakistan, as you did. We haven't even talked about that, but he had a big year in Pakistan, and he's had some really nice results. And he was saying that for him, the X Alps has really never gone that well. Now, for most people, it would be very well. He was sixth and seventh, and I mean, but he hasn't won, and he's very competitive. And he was saying that he feels like that one of the reasons is that he's always had people on his team who have been pilots, and this year he's going to have a team with no pilots. He'll have a mountain guide, he'll have strong people, and he'll have the supporters that he needs. But he wants to he just wants to be uninfluenced by others, and not that it's even a bad influence. He just feels like he performs better if the decision making is all his. And it's interesting to hear.
Yeah. And it makes
it's interesting
sense.
for me to even contemplate an X-Alps without a pilot on my team, but it does make sense. I like that philosophy, and that
It does make sense.
we all know what we're doing.
And not only, yeah, and then there are pilots and pilots. I have some pilots in my team for next year, but they know what they know, and they the problem is we've been through this. We know exactly what it is and what it feels like, and sometimes people would say, yeah, you should go because they're so excited, but it's dangerous, or it's windy, or it's not as good, or maybe you should just wait 5 minutes because it's going to get better. And I really try to really rely on my intuition. Intuition, it's not some sort of magic, you know. It's based on your experience. It's all the experience that you gather through the years, and then when you get into a certain situation, you have that feeling, that gut feeling that says, "Hey, this is a good situation. You've been through this before, you know." Or the other way around, you have a bad intuition because you've been through this situation and it's last time it didn't end well. So it's experience. It's based on experience, and maybe I would think that you're the most experienced in your team because you're there and you're the athletes and you've been through those races before. And so I think to rely on someone who maybe has been flying for 3 or 4 years, is super motivated, he's got lots of ideas and stuff, but maybe he doesn't have the key to for the next move, and you shouldn't pay too much attention to him. And I've done it many times. In 2007, I remember this guy who told me, "Hey, I'm the local champion. I've been flying in this area for many years. I'm going to show you a takeoff. I flew a 120-kilometer triangle from here. You're going to love it, blah, blah, blah." He took me to this place. I hiked for 1 hour following this guy, thinking he knows everything. He's probably the guy to follow. And then I arrived on the worst takeoff I had ever seen. The wind was from the side. It was impossible to take off. They were surrounded by trees. And then I looked at this guy and I thought, well, I don't know him. I've never heard of him. I don't know who he is. Maybe he's just a friend of another athlete and he's telling me stories, you know? Who knows? I mean, I would think that that's not the case,
Sure.
but you know,
Never
who
know.
knows? You know, and here you are, you've been training for 2 years and you're there and you follow the first guy who comes with a good idea. This is ridiculous. This was my mistake for sure, you know? And it happened to me many times. Those guys that say, "Hey, I know the way to the takeoff," and then they get lost on the way. Like, do you really know where you're going? Yeah, yeah, I've been here before. And then you take twice as much time as the other one who's following you. So it's something that I think you should trust yourself first and then trust your team, but take your own decisions always. And I think for Aaron, this is for sure. This is true. And I think also I've talked to Aaron a lot about this because we are quite close friends, and it's also like the pressure because he's won everything. You know, he's one of the top pilots out there, probably top 5 pilot in the world for sure. And and Aaron is you know, it's got a lot of pressure. He wants to do well in this race, you know, and when he takes things easy, like he goes to other races without too much pressure and doing his thing and stuff, he's the fastest. And he takes the right decisions. And I think he's going to do well this year. I'm quite confident. Like Aaron is one of the
He's in a
favorites for
good.
sure for
He's
this
in a
year
really. I
edition.
haven't seen him this physically strong. He's always strong, but he's yeah. He's. I think he's in the right headspace going into this one. It'll be fun to watch him. Which reminds me of
Yeah,
2013. So that was, you guys had banner weather in 2013. Kriegel finished in 6 days. You even had a tailwind, which is unheard of in the X-Alps. For the first, all the way to Mont Blanc, there was kind of a light easterly. I don't know if you remember that, but
yeah,
I wasn't in the race.
yeah. That
But
was
at this
amazing.
point, I was completely addicted to it. And I remember watching you guys the first day, from the Geisberg up to the Dockstein and flying down the Pinzgau. And I mean, I think Kriegel almost made it to Lermoos that day, or maybe he did.
Yeah,
But it was him and Aaron going, they were battling out front because they're both, big time comp
yeah.
pilots, and they were going real fast. But yeah, tell us about 2013 and your experience. The weather was incredible.
Yeah, 2013 was incredible. It was an amazing year. For me, it was a complicated year because I went into the race with a sea glider. It actually happened to me 2 times, no, 3 times in the race. So that's interesting. I mean, I was flying with Gradient, as you know, and it was my sponsor, and I was doing lots of other adventures with them. And it was a beautiful brand. They had good gliders and stuff, but they didn't, like, the timing was always wrong. Like, it didn't work out. Like, they would have a new D glider, but then we use it for one X-Alps and then maybe the second another X-Alps, and then I arrived in 2013 and we didn't have a glider ready. And so the new C glider was almost performing as well. It was the Aspen at the time, but still, you couldn't keep up with the other guys. Impossible. You know, it was the first, I think it was the year where the M5 came out or something.
Mm.
So Ozone had a really good glider. And So for me, it was very frustrating because you are with some of the best pilots in the world flying a sea glider. You're really limited with wind and performances and stuff. I remember that on the day we took off with Kegel, actually, I think it was on the second day, we took off from Dachstein together. And when I landed, I was 3 kilometers behind him, and I had to go around the hill to go. So I was not on takeoff with him that day, and I couldn't keep up. So it was hard. But at the same time, I had a really good time. And one of my best memory of this race, because we were still flying 100K every day and really covering distance. And that's the first time after 2007, 2009, and 2011. That's the first time that I passed Mont Blanc and I started to get really close to Monaco. And on the very last day, it was incredible because I was I think, I don't remember exactly where. I think I was 12 or 11, or it doesn't matter. But we were fighting with the Polish guy. I don't remember his name anymore. Pavel, yeah. Pavel. Yeah. And yeah, it's such a nice guy. And so it was the last 2 hours of the race, and he was going to be flying. So we climbed to the takeoff and took off. And he arrived flying. He went on another takeoff, and he basically joined me flying. And I knew he had a better glider than mine. I had no, like, if he just stay with me, he would win, because at the end it just has to push the speed bar. It just had to push the speed bar, and he would just leave me behind. So I knew that, and he knew it also. So my only technique was I needed to find a way to, get lost and try to leave him behind. So in one of those, I remember it was a beautiful mountain near Gap, not far from Gap. And it was a very sharp edge. And I was flying, turning into a thermal there, and then I would kind of play hide and seek with him, I would go behind the thing and then come back. And every time I would come back, I could see he was watching me, and he was turning into his own thermal, but only 200 meters away. Like he was in control. For sure, he was in control. And I was turning and hiding and then appearing again, hiding, appearing again. And then all of a sudden I saw, okay, now he thinks that I'm going to stay here and try to, climb in this smooth thermal. Then I push the speed bar full on and I get super close to the wall and I start racing. And when he realized, I was already like maybe 1 kilometer in front. So I'm there in front, and there's like maybe 15 minutes left or something. So I'm like, okay, I need to climb now. And so I get another thermal, and he follows me, and he's catching up. Of course, I mean, his glider is flying way better than mine. He's catching up. And then I see the time. There's 5 minutes left. I'm 1,000 meter high. I say, okay, now it's speed bar towards the goal, like towards Monaco. So I push full speed bar. I put my arms inside my harness, and I'm like, okay, now we will see what happens. And then he comes and gets closer and closer and closer. And to be honest with you, I think we were just side by side at the end of the race. Like we were together.
Oh,
I could even flew in front of me. But because the live tracking had 2 minutes delay, I was showed 10 meters in front of him at the end of the race. And so I
got
the position
close?
in front of him. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. We were like just next to each other at the very last second of the race. Like we were together.
Wow.
And so we did a ground spiral together. We did a spiral together, like glider against glider. We landed and I jumped into his arms and we started like laughing, oh, what a finish. It was amazing. We were like super happy, and it didn't really matter like who was first or second. It was just, we had played this beautiful game for the like 2 hours and a half. Like we had really pushed ourselves in, and flying at the end is so much better than being running on the road, And I remember it was Evgeny, the Russian guy. He was running on the road. We flew over him like 10 minutes before the end also. Yes. So we overpassed him. But yeah, it was amazing. And then we celebrated. And I think at the end I was maybe 12 and he was 13, or 13 and 14. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But that was a really cool finish. We partied really hard
cool.
that night.
That's amazing. I've never been, that just made me think, I've never been in the air at the end of the race. Yeah, but I've either been
Okay,
on the
yeah,
ground or I
yeah,
mean, my first one I was in Monaco, which was awesome. But the other ones I've always been on the ground. That'd be cool to be in the air at the end of the race and racing. That'd be
not
awesome.
even in the last race. In the last race, I was in the air also during
Really
the end of the race.
cool.
Yeah,
I had just landed.
yeah,
I
enjoy that.
Yeah, that was neat. It was a neat end for us last time, but no, I had just landed. Oh wow, that'd be
Yeah,
really cool. Okay, so 2015,
that was
my
cool
first.
because
You
we knew, but we were both. Yeah, 2015. Yeah, that's also an interesting year. That was your first time, right?
Yeah, that was my first. You've already done four at this point, and you're still much younger than I am. But
But you did really well on your races there. I remember you did amazingly well.
2015 was good. Yeah, that was. I'd like to have that headspace back because I know I'm a better pilot. Over all these years, but like we were talking about earlier, I think it helped a lot going in being completely ignorant, having no idea. I literally had no idea if I was just going to be eliminated or if I could do it. I had never been an endurance athlete, but, so I was going in with a lot of trepidation, which allowed me to be, I think, just do stuff and have fun, and so, which worked a lot better. But there was a lot of wind. Your buddy, we saw a lot of dropouts that year. Michael Gebhardt and Toma got really hurt. You got hurt. It was a pretty radical race.
Yeah, yeah, and but yeah, it was a radical race, and it was mentally quite difficult. And I remember you just talked about Michael Gebhardt who dropped out of the race. I was there with him that day, and we took off together, and conditions were super bad. And again, we were both flying sea gliders, so we were quite limited in wind. Like when you have to push the speed bar on a sea glider, and you just get stuck. And so it was hard. And on one of those flights, it was very turbulent, and we were flying together with Michael, and one of a sudden, for I don't know why, it just turned around and went to land. But it went back like maybe 10 kilometers to land in town, in a town down there in the valley. And I knew at that moment, I kind of felt that he was stopping the race. He actually told me in the morning, yeah, I don't know why, but I don't embrace the conditions anymore. I don't feel like this is a safe for me anymore. And so I was like, yeah, well, you should just listen to what you feel and just stop, or maybe take a day off and think about it. And so he stopped the race, and I kept on going, and I was catching up with the group. Um, I made a few good moves, and one morning I was with Ferdi van Schelven in Bellinzona, in the area of Bellinzona, and we were number 7, I think, so together, and we do really well when we fly as a team. So we were like excited. We're like, okay, this is the moment for us to try to perform as a team, because we've been on many adventures together and know each other really well, and we were super motivated to try to keep going together during the race. And we arrived on the takeoff, and it was a super sketchy takeoff, very steep. It was no wind, a little bit of breeze coming up, but almost nothing. And what we do with Ferdi when we get into those places, we do rock, paper, scissors, to see who's going to take off first. And so we did rock, paper, scissors, and he said, okay, I'm going to go first, because he knew I could help him. I could hold his glider and stuff. So he went down into the face a little bit, and I was holding his glider, and he took off perfectly. He had a bit of breeze. He took off really nice and went away. And so I prepared, and I got everything ready. And because I had seen his takeoff, I thought, well, this is going to be easy. It looks good. But I inflated my glider, and for whatever reason, it kind of stayed. It didn't really carry me. I couldn't feel the pressure, but I felt like, okay, well, this is super steep. I'm just going to give 2 steps, and it will start to fly. But it didn't. I gave 2 steps, and the glider kind of stayed in behind, and kind of stalled, like entered into a deep stall. And so I hit a rock, maybe 4 meters below, and I tumbled above the rock, and then the glider got tangled into the stones or whatever. I don't know exactly what happened, but I fell for 30 meters, and my glider got tangled into rocks. Half of my lines on the right side broke, and the other half hopefully hold. And I went back to the wall, like with my foot in front at full speed, and boom, hit the wall super hard and broke my foot. And then I was sitting on a super small edge, maybe 30 centimeter edge, sitting there with one, like half seated and looking down, and I had 200 or 250 meters of
Ooh.
steep faces. Like, yeah, I should, I think that was just the worst accident I ever had. I mean, I only broke my foot, which was nothing. But in regards of what happened, I should have died that day. My helmet was broken in two. I hit a rock with with my helmet, and the helmet was smashed. And the crazy thing, and that it's quite crazy. And when I tell the story, people don't believe it. But I pushed the button on my inReach, and I was one of those guys who really insisted at the time that everyone should have an inReach. And I pushed on the SOS button on the inReach, and so they called my family because they get the message, and they called my mom and they called my team, and they said, "Hey, Tom pushed on his button. What do you think we should do? We are the crisis team." And for whatever reason, my supporter this time, said to them, "Oh, he's probably okay. He was flying with his friend Ferdi. Ferdi is still flying. Tom should be okay." So I pushed a second time, and then my mom received the message again, and she felt that something was wrong. So she called Tarquin Cooper because she had his number, and she called the organization, and she said, "Guys, my son pushed twice on the button. He's a professional athlete. He knows what he's doing. I don't think he just pushed on the button by mistake. You should send someone." And so 3 hours later, the helicopter came with something that could have taken 5 minutes, like they
Yeah.
knew, and they were just next door. They just thought that they wanted to think that everything was fine. So they just
Wow.
didn't check, which was crazy. So that was a big mistake. And that was my mistake. I should have briefed my team and say, "Guys, if I push the button, just send someone, just don't
Yeah.
even think about it." And, my supporter had maybe 3 hours of sleep the night before, and he was exhausted and probably just didn't think properly. And also because what happened, and that was hard for Ferdi, is Ferdi actually flew away and never saw me coming out of that takeoff. And he kind of felt like, okay, maybe he didn't take off, or he kind of,
Yeah. He
I
didn't
don't know
know.
what happened exactly in his head, but he didn't know. But at the same time, we were so close. Like, and so in the evening, I went to see him and I said, "Hey, Ferdi, that's okay," because he was crying. He was like, "I feel so sorry. You could have died, and I was not even there to check, and I didn't even fly back, 500 meters to just see if everything was okay." And I was like, "This is fine. This is a race. This is okay." But he felt so bad. That was really a hard moment for him. And he wanted to quit the race the next day because he just felt so bad about this. And I understood. I was like, "Man, we're all exhausted, and we're in another place, and we just we don't know how to deal with all this. So it's too much to take." But that evening, Ferdi landed in fifth position, and I think together we could have done also a really nice flight. So, but yeah, I was super scared, and that's where you see that was a scary moment, and that's where you see the experience of those guys with the helicopters in the Alps. They just came, they dropped someone on a line. He sat next to me, and then we took the glider, or what was left of the glider, and then they put me a harness, and then they took me out and flew me to the hospital in Bellinzona, and there I was for a few days to recover. So that was a difficult year, but yeah, that's how you learn, I guess. So
Bellinzona's not
that was
not been a kind place to you.
no, and that's the funny part of the story. Is that a year before I broke my back in Bellinzona, and actually that's the same helicopter that came to get me, and they brought me into the same hospital.
Really?
And so they brought me into the
Uh,
same hospital. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And at the time, I was sponsored by Salomon, so I was dressed with Salomon stuff. I was with my Red Bull helmets and with my hiking poles and my paraglider, and I came a year later exactly, dressed pretty much the same in the same hospital again for a paragliding accident. But on the first accident, I broke my back and I stayed for like a week there, So everyone knew me and they called me the Iron Man because I had a paragliding crash, but I was still kind of okay. And so when I came there, like, "Hey, the Iron Man is back." And I was like, "Oh, come on, guys. No jokes, please." And so I knew everyone. I knew all the nurses by
oh,
their
that's
names and stuff. It's
hysterical.
a small hospital. So yeah, it was the accident happened 5 kilometers away from the accident I had a year before. So it was
Wow.
I had 3 difficult years because I broke my back during the Adriatic Circle with Polish Bauer, where we went all around the Adriatic Sea. We covered 3,000 kilometers hiking and flying, and I broke my back there. And then it took a while to recover, and then we came back in spring to finish the Adriatic Circle, and it was really good training for X-Alps. And then came to X-Alps, and then I broke my foot. So went again into the whole, surgery and the whole thing, and and then I recovered. I started to go on expeditions again, and then I had a climbing accident, and I lost a part of my finger with a big, massive stone that fell on me. Um, so it was like 3 years in a row where I had accidents. I don't know if you've seen that before, but
No,
yeah, I
I
have
didn't know that.
a missing
Whoa,
finger. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I didn't
I
know that
was I
one.
was climbing with you know him with Sean Villanueva. He's just won the
Yeah,
Piolet d'Or. He's a Patagonia athlete, and
yeah.
Nicolas Favres, Nico, and we were climbing together, opening a new line. And I'm not a good climber. Like I was following them and just enjoying my time in the mountains. But I had a bad feeling that morning, and I told them, hey, I don't have a really good feeling about this. And then yeah, I was going after them, and basically I don't know exactly what happened, but I tried to go over a big stone, big boulder, and the whole thing disconnected from the wall and fell on me. It was as big as a fridge, so I almost
Oh,
got smashed. And yeah, yeah, and they had just passed there a minute before, so they got lucky too, and I got lucky because I would have been below. And a minute before, I took a friend, one of those thing that they put into the cracks. I
hmm.
took it out of that stone. So imagine if the whole thing went off with it inside, we would just have we wouldn't be there to tell the story. So
Whoa.
it was the third year in a row that I had an accident, and there I thought, okay, now I have to think about the way I approach risk and how I manage it, and that was very interesting because then I went to spend some time with the at the APC. So Red Bull has you might know we have an athlete performance center called the APC, and it's a super cool place where athletes can go and train and get advices and stuff. And we have mental coaches, we have psychologists, we have doctors, trainers, and everything. And so I went there and I said, guys, I need to think about the way I approach risk, and I need some tools. I need to see things differently. And it was very interesting. I think we talked about it before, maybe in the podcast last time, but it was the way you can manage risk and the way you can approach it. And he gave me a little thing that I would like to share with the pilots out there, because it's interesting. He said, when you get into a situation, let's say you're getting on a takeoff in the morning, there's 3 things you should check. One is how you feel. Like, is it a good day? Did you have your coffee this morning? Did you have a good night? Is everything okay at home?
Just kind of a
In your
mental check-in.
relations. Mental check. How do you
Mhm.
feel? Do you
Okay.
feel good? Then the other one is the location check, if I could say. It's like, where am I? And what are the conditions? Oh, the sky is dark. Maybe it's windy. It's coming from the side. The takeoff is steep. It can be anything. Or it's beautiful and it's great and it looks like an amazing day. And what about your gear? Okay, I'm flying a new glider, or I'm flying a glider that I know. Like, let's say the surrounding, everything that surrounds us. That's the second thing that you have to check. And then the third thing is the mission. What did I come for? I came here to take off. Okay, well, and then what? To fly long distance. Okay, am I prepared? Do I have enough food? Do I have all my instruments charged and stuff? And so by only doing this, you can see if some red lights pops up. Like, if,
Mhm.
oh well, I'm actually tired, or I just, my wife just left me, which I hope is never going to be the case. But but and or I've never flown this glider, or the wind is coming from the side. But it's just a check. It takes 5 minutes, but it gives you, you can position yourself, in the reality, and you can look around and say, okay, well, maybe this is not a good day, or maybe I
Mhm.
just should take my expectations or my mission lower my goals today, because maybe I'm tired. And by only doing this, it gives me a lot more clarity, if I can say,
Yeah.
and it's super easy. It's pretty basic, you might even think, but most people don't do this. They arrive on takeoff and they're just they get on their routine and let's take off, and they in a hurry. And I think that's a very, very powerful tool, and it helps me to connect with my intuition. It
Yeah.
helps me to just take that moment to think and say, okay, how do I feel about this? And if the intuition says, hey Tom, be extra careful, then I'm just going to be extra careful.
Yeah. I mean, I think setting an environment for our brains to adapt, if you make that kind of sequence a habit, you can, your brain, like you said, intuition, it's not magic. It is our collective
Mhm.
experiences that we call our gut feeling, and our gut feeling is something,
Exactly.
we need to get really good at listening to, because it's not, like you said, it's not wacky. It is, it's a combination of fear and all those things that we need to stay alive. And I think it's, when you have that, I like that you've created kind of a mental framework for you to kind of jump in, assess things real quick. How do I feel? How does the sky look? How do things look? And what am I here to do? And it's, sometimes that answer is, yeah, you can walk down, which is a good thing. It's a good thing.
Exactly. And it's just about tuning in with yourself, like be tuned and listen to your inner voices and stuff,
Mm,
and and we do, when in paragliding, we do a lot of, like, you go to paragliding school and people won't tell you about these things. They'll tell you
yeah.
about how to take off and how to land and this and that, but they won't tell you about, just let's just sit down and look at what it is and what's happening. And and you can avoid so many mistakes. And it happened many times that in the past where I took off and then you're in the air and then, oh, the wind is quite strong. Like, I should have realized before taking off,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not how it should work. So it's like, okay, we have a lot of experience, so we get ourselves into tricky conditions and we can save ourselves, basically. We can manage. But still, maybe you get into the red zone, you don't even notice, and you do
Mm,
that a few times, and then it's all about statistics. One day you're gonna get hurt. So I think that's very interesting to say, okay, just let's take a little bit of time and to reflect on what's, and not to reflect, but to analyze what's happening around us, and just try to understand and tune in with conditions and stuff. And I do that also at the end of a flight. I try to take 2 minutes after landing, because most of the time you land and then you're just happy, you want to have a fresh beer and stuff. But I pack and then I sit down for a minute and I like, okay, how was it? What did I like? What I didn't like? Was it a close call, or did I feel safe all the way? Maybe I should have do things differently. And I tried to just do it while I'm still in it, because if you wait for a few days and you forget about your experience, or you just get into a next flight, and maybe you cannot get the most out of it.
mm,
So it's a mind game at the end of the day,
mm.
and people tend to forget about this, but
Yeah.
it's just a mind game, the whole thing.
Good advice. I love it.
Mm.
Tom, 2017. I remember a lot of bad weather in 2017. You and I we were pretty close to each other in that race for a long ways, as I recall. And we had the Garda turn point, which was tough. But yeah, I remember a lot of big weather, a lot of storms. But that was the tree glove. That's right. That was the tree glove year. I saw the scariest flying I'd ever seen in
Yeah,
my
yeah,
life.
yeah.
Day two, I had pulled my night pass inextricably. That was a huge mistake, and walked all night. And I had gotten up to that pass that was heading down into Austria the next
I
morning,
remember.
and turned around and saw Paul and Gaspard and Benoit and others fly out of that canyon in really strong north fern conditions. And I actually called Jorgen, the safety director, and said, "You better get the helicopter out here. Somebody's going down." It was the sketchiest flying I'd ever seen in my life. And that was when Kriegel pulled that, yet again, another incredibly magic move, and got all the way down to Triglav and got out that night. That was amazing to see. But tell us
Yeah, we
about
remember
tell
that.
us
That
about
was crazy.
2017. Remember the first day, no one flew.
I
I think
mean,
that was a first in the X Alps, and there wasn't. It wasn't. We got up to the top of the Geisberg, and it was dumping rain, so we all just walked off it.
we ran down.
Ran down. Yeah,
Right. I remember that. That was horrible.
it was horrible.
Yeah, I remember that. Man, 2017 was for me one of the worst. But at the same time, it was very interesting. It was one of the worst because I was doing quite okay, but then I got a penalty time.
Oh, that's
And there was a
right.
mistake that,
Going
I
up to the
mean, I
Kimsey.
was, yeah. So what happened is that I don't remember exactly. I do remember, but every morning I would get a briefing from my team, and they would give me the forbidden areas. At the time, we didn't have so many. I should have, to be honest, it's my mistake. I should have known every area. Like now, I study every forbidden area on the way and try to know all of them. But it's difficult, as you know, and there's so many. And that day, we in the morning we analyzed Kriegel's track, and we thought, oh, this is interesting what it did there around this mountain. I would have go straight. Why is that? But we didn't see it, and we had this Google Earth app, and it was a forbidden area, but the color was really dark, and we didn't see it.
Oh,
And
shit.
I didn't see it. My team didn't see it, and so it was not in my briefing. And every day I would receive a little piece of paper from my team with all the forbidden areas. Be careful with this and that. And so I was flying and I hear the Vario beeping, like doing this alarm thing, but I'm like, oh, I must be close to something, but there is no forbidden areas because I haven't seen it and it's not in my briefing. And I flew into it only by, I think, 5 meters. And it was a zone, a military zone where the guys, the military, they train once a month. They do shooting exercises or something. So it's forbidden, but it was not like I was into a big airspace or,
Yeah, you weren't
you
hitting a
know,
CTR or something. It was one of those weird ones.
causing trouble. Yeah, yeah, no, in traffic, like nothing like that. But anyway, I went into it, and the rule was really clear at the time. It was 48 hours penalty. So that was really hard to take because I was doing well. I was in the top 10, I think, and then I got a call from the race director. He said, "Hey, Tom, I'm sorry, but you're gonna get 48 hours penalty."
Mm.
So I knew that at the end of those 48 hours, I was going to be fat last, which happened actually. I took 2 days off, which was great. I mean, I had 4 days of racing or 5 days, and then I took 2 days off. So we went into a small village. We put a camp, like we bought some food, and I slept a lot, and I rested, and there was nothing I could do,
Yeah.
and then one of the guy had also a penalty, so we it was Evney, and he also had the penalty. He went into the same forbidden area than me, so we were both into that situation, and we were last. So we started to push ourselves like as much as we could, and we got lucky because one guy got hurt in front, and he decided not to get out of the race. He kind of said, "Hey guys, I'm hurt, but I'm just going to sit here so you can pass in front of me." It was a Spanish, if and so you're not going to be disqualified. So at the time it was Evney in the back, so I was kind of safe. But then and for the rest of the race, we were fighting to avoid being the last and being cut off the race. So it was really hard for me, but I could build some distance and cover some distance, and I could save myself. But so at the end of the race, I was just one before last or something like that, but I was still in the race, which was became my new my new
Goal.
goal basically after I got the penalty time. But it was hard. It's hard to like to race again in a race where you can't do anything. You're not gonna get to the end, which was my dream. You're not gonna do anything. The ranking is gonna be pretty bad, so you really have to not just go home. It's hard.
Mm.
But I couldn't go home. Like I should. You have to do things with style and just play it fair play. As we can say. So I just say, okay, well, this is what it is, and my team said, oh, sorry. I said, okay, well, this is how. There's nothing we can do about it, and we kept on pushing quite hard. And I was really tired at the end of that race because we really pushed, and that's where you realize that actually, because we look at the ranking and we think, well, those guys in the back, they must be lazy, but that's really not the case. I mean, you push as much as you push in the front and in the back. It's crazy how fast actually it goes in the back. But sometimes you have a little bit of bad luck, bad weather. you get into the last group, and then you have to fight for your life, and that's so intense. I would prefer 100 times being somewhere in the middle, so you don't have all that pressure of being cut off the race. That's
I
super
had
hard to
I
be there
had
in the back.
never experienced that until my last race. That was series of weird things happened to us the first 2 or 3 days in the last race, where I'd always had pretty good starts, and was uncomfortable, and I've never had to think about elimination or had to deal with that
Yeah,
until this last one. And I was on the chopping block for the first four, I think, or for at least the first three eliminations. And you're, like you said, it's a totally different kind of racing. It's very stressful. And Nick Nanens, who had always done well, he and I were battling it out, and a couple others that were really covering ground well. And it was, I just kept thinking, there's no way I'm going to get eliminated from this race. I just got to keep doing my thing. But it was really neck and
yeah,
neck.
but
And then we had some bad, some things happen that were kind of out of our control. People ahead that would just quit instead of just riding it out, which isn't really
yeah,
in the
that's bad.
philosophy of the race. And it was
Yeah,
it was always intense. It was intense for quite a while, and then finally broke free of it, day 7 or day 8 or something. But yeah, it's a
yeah, you came
completely
back.
different kind of
Yeah,
place
it
to
was
be. It's
beautiful.
scary.
Yeah, and it's scary and it's intense, and you tend to take more risks too,
Yeah.
because you kind of you have that pressure, that extra pressure, and I hated it. And
Mm.
but for us, that we know what the race is all about, and I've seen some of the best pilots in the back, like Martin Müller 1 year was really almost last, and we all thought he was gonna. And then the next day he flew 150K and came back into top three, and I think he finished the race in the top. So it can change so fast.
Yeah.
But we all know that if you have a little bit of bad luck or one wrong decision, or on the other way, like if you have good luck, if you're lucky and you make a good move, it can change the whole race. And sometimes you're 5 minutes late, in the evening, and you just cannot fly down into the valley, and then you lose half a day. And that happens all the time, and it's hard. It's hard to take it and to just accept it and say, okay, well, tomorrow it's going to be another day, and we'll try to give our best. And for me, in the last race, it felt like I was always off timing. I would arrive when the wind was getting strong, and then I would catch up with the guys, and then boom, it was whatever, for whatever reason, couldn't go, or I would arrive late in the evening on a high mountain pass and not being able to fly down and have to hike down on half of the night. So it felt like it was just off timing all the time, and
Mm.
but that's how it is, I guess. That's how the race works. And for me, 2017 was really hard, but 2019 was probably one of my best year,
I was gonna
especially
say,
because
if
I
we go
made
to
it to Monaco,
2019,
and that was
we get to see you come alive. That was your year. It was all these years of just slipping out of the top 10 and or just not making Monaco, and 2019 was your year. Man, you were strong that year. It just charging. You were in the top 10 the
yeah,
whole race.
I but I have to be like, if I'm totally honest with you, it's not that I was not prepared the races before, but I didn't take it so seriously. Like, and I was flying sea gliders some years, and it was like, but 2019, I really decided to change, the way I was doing things. I prepared with a different, like, I took a team that were like really a lot more professional, if I can say. We were before, it was just like, okay, let's go on a cool adventure, let's push and let's try to do something. But my approach in 2019 was, I could say, for the first time, really more professional. And my goal was to get to Monaco, and I was really into it, and I trained like hell that year. I flew a lot. I studied the route, and I got a bit lucky, in the flights and the flying parts. And it was a very interesting year, because until 3 days before the end, I thought, well, if I want to make it, I need to fly 120K per day minimum. I think I had to cover 150 a day straight lines. It was. I thought I was not going to make it. And especially when I arrived in Monteviso, that was really hard. That day, I make it to Monteviso, and I enter into the turn point and out, and then I'm flying out and I'm going, and I received a message from a friend and from the organization, and they say, "Tom, you didn't make the turn point." And I'm like, "What?" "Yeah, well, you just didn't get into the cylinder. You have to go back." And so I'm there soaring on a high, like on a mountain, not far from there, like maybe 3 or 4 kilometers. But the clouds are getting dark, and I'm like, if I'm going back, I'm not gonna be able to get out. And I'm like, "Are you sure?" "Yeah, yeah, yeah." So I land and I called the organization. I said, "Guys, are you really sure?" And we talk, and I lose like almost half an hour, and I see pilots flying above me. And then I look at the fly master, and he didn't have coverage. My flymaster didn't get the SIM card, was not working. So what was happening is, at the time when your flymaster was not working, your inReach was doing the points, but of course your inReach was doing a point every 10 minutes. So that point was out of the cylinder. And then I decided to trust myself and think, well, when the flymaster will get coverage, he will send the points and they will see that I was in, fuck it, I'm going south. So I took off again, but I had lost an hour and a half almost. It was crazy.
Shocking. Oh, I didn't
So I
know that.
flew out, and I landed at the bottom of the valley. When everyone landed 20 k's in front, they were in a much better position for the next day. It was really hard for me. And so I landed there, and then we realized that I did do the turn point. It was in, clearly in. So I was like, oh man, I should have just gone. That wouldn't happen anymore because we have double instruments
Yeah,
and we
yeah.
check everything so well and stuff. But I started to doubt. You get a call from the organization. They say, Tom, you didn't make it. You have to fly back. You're like, okay, well, you trust them. So anyway, not trying to find excuses, but that evening I thought, I'm not going to make it to Monaco. This is ruined. This is too far. I only have 24 hours left. This is too much. I had to fly 160K the next day, and the conditions were not even great. But then the next day, I got lucky. The weather improved. I flew well, and I was really super motivated. And I entered into Monaco the next day. What was interesting is that I arrived flying, and I had a big thunderstorm in my back, and I had a convergence, and I was flying like everything was going up, beep 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 beep. And then I saw the other guys just in front of me, like the top five, between I think it was 6, 7, 8, and 9. They were all just there. I could see them, and I could reach them. I could go and go with them. But I thought, I'm not going to make a difference if I go with them. They're in front, they'll stay in front, and we're going to be running one after the other. So I'm just going to try another line, and it didn't work. I just went down, didn't do much. And when I landed, I looked at my GPS and I saw 75 kilometers to hike to get to the turn point. And I start counting hours, and I'm like, okay, I have my night pass. Okay, at an average of 7 kilometers per hour, I will do it. But I had to keep that average.
Oh,
So I started running, and I ran for 10 hours, and I arrived at 1 hour before the end of the race
oh
to
my
Monaco.
God,
So that
Tom! I
was
didn't
very
know
special for
that.
me. Yeah.
Holy smokes!
Yeah,
What an
yeah, that was
effort!
really had to push like the whole night after such a long race. But I knew I was gonna make it. Like I was already celebrating. Like I knew, okay, 10 hours, 75 k's, or I have to. It was 12 hours, 75 k. So I had to average around 7 per hour, 7K per hour, and I knew I could do it. Like running and hiking really fast, and it was downhill quite a lot at the beginning, so I was really fast, but then it was up and down and up and down, and I was like pushing. But I knew I had wings. I had been waiting for that moment all my life. So for me, it was I'm just gonna go for it. And it was very emotional. Like I remember when I arrived on top, I cried. I was so happy to be there with my team, and to see Monaco from that point of view, and yeah, to make it to Monaco, and being I think I was 10th or something, or ninth, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was beautiful, really cool experience. And that day, Coconea flew into the thunderstorm. Thomas Coconea flew into the thunderstorm I was just telling you about, and he had to escape, and so he went north. He flew up to 5,000 meters, and then he escaped, and he went back north, flew back 40K, and landed somewhere. That was pretty heavy, but yeah, beautiful race. I really enjoyed, and I think it was hard also in the same time, because I was always between 6, 7. I was really 7, 8 into the race, and I thought maybe I could do something, maybe being 6 or 7 or 8. But I was just happy to make it to Monaco, and that was good enough for me.
And in 2021, we got the big, huge change of not going to Monaco anymore, which I personally was thrilled about. I didn't like Monaco very much, but I did kind of feel for the rookies going into it, because it's something to get there. It's special to go to the sea, but totally different race, and kind of an out and back be around Mont Blanc. And you and I didn't spend any time together. Like I said, I was fighting at the back in the beginning, and really had a tough few days to start off with the race. But my weather experience with the race was frequently terrifying. And I'd love to hear your perspective and how the race went for you, because as in 2019, you were crushing it. You were really doing well.
Yeah, what was very interesting for me is that for the first time I had an amazing glider, in 2021. So in 2019 I was flying with the Wild from Super, but it was already 4 years old, the glider. So I flew it in 2017 also. And it was a good glider in 2017, but in 2019 it was already quite behind the others. But in 2021 I had an Advance, an Omega. It was the same glider as Kriegel was flying, and it was a great glider. Like, for the first time, I could really feel speed and performance, and I could feel that I was, fighting with the others on the same. Like if you go to a Formula One race with the same car as the first ones, it's super. It was very motivating for me. I mean, everyone had good gliders at this stage, but still, it was really good for me to have one of those. And so I was extra motivated. I had been flying quite a lot, and in terms of training, I put a lot of hours. Like physically, I was very strong. I think I actually have the record that no one wants to have. I'm the athlete who hiked the most in 2021. I
Really?
hiked, I think, 600, and yeah. I had it 3 times in my short career. The record of the guy who hikes the most, but at this time I think I hiked 650k, um, and I
Ooh.
didn't even use my night pass. And I didn't use my night pass, and I was still like 40k in front of the second one or something. So it was
Whoa.
too much hiking. But I felt okay. But like you, my little daughter was very young. It felt really important to come back home in one piece. I approached race differently for that race, and I always said to my partners and also my sponsors. I remember the guys at Advance saying, "Hey, Tom, just don't go over it. Like take it easy, no pressure, do your thing. But we want to see you in one piece at the end, and just take it easy." And so that was great. And from the beginning of the race, like on the first day, I was great because it was my birthday actually, and so I celebrated my birthday at the start of the race. And that day, I had a really good flight, and one of my best memory, but that's very personal and that doesn't mean anything. But was at some stage we were in front with Ferdi and with Kriegel and some other ones. I mean, everyone was around, but we were in the very front, near Dachstein. And I kind of decided to leave the place because we were in a super shitty lee side. I didn't like it, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna risk it. Fuck this. Just if you want to fly in the lee side, just do your thing. But I'm going. I'm leaving. So I start flying away, and I'm first with Ferdi together, and I find the thermal on the way, very smooth. But I get it, and I start turning, and there comes Kriegel because he sees me going up, and we go glider against glider into this super small and shit thermal. And I don't know how, but he kind of loses it, and I get it. And so here I am, like really putting distance between Kriegel and I, and really like building big difference. Like, and I get to cloud base, and he's 500 meters below. I'm like, whoa! And then my
Whoa,
phone
that's
goes
a moment
crazy.
to
Like everyone is
enjoy.
sending me WhatsApps. Yeah. Everyone is like, "Happy birthday, Tom! You just left the Kriegel the eagle into, like you left him there." And it was pure luck, as you know. Like I got into the bubble and I got lucky. It was pure luck. It doesn't mean anything, of course. We all know that. But for me, it was like it was my birthday. It was the start of the race. I had a really good feeling, and it gave me a lot of confidence. I kind of felt, now you just believe in yourself, you just did this. And it was interesting. And then we kept on going. But that evening, and then after, we flew down to the turn point, and for whatever reason, my glide was not so good. The wind was a bit shaky, and so I landed, and then I didn't have time to make it to the pass and fly down the other side. So I went all around. And then the next day I made a small mistake. And that was very interesting, actually. On the second day, I made a mistake that cost me a lot, actually. Um, I arrived on a really good take. I was with Ferdi. Ferdi was following me, and Laurie was with me. And I'm with Laurie, and I arrive on a really nice takeoff. It's beautiful, it's nice and stuff. And but then I look at the next hill, and I'm like, well, maybe it's, I still have half an hour to kill because it's too early to take off. I just have time to go to the next hill. And Laurie says, oh, I'm gonna stay here. It's good enough. It's a good takeoff. And for whatever reason, I walk and I hike to the next hill, and I sit there and I see it's getting good. And then I see Laurie and Ferdi taking off because they had breeze and their spot was probably better, but I didn't have anything coming up, and my takeoff was bad, and I took off and I couldn't climb, and I landed at the bottom, and I saw those two guys flying above me just because I wanted to, you know, cover half a kilometer more. It was ridiculous, but I thought, okay, this is going to be, it's on the same ridge. This is going to be good anyway. Just, I have time to kill. I'm just going to walk a little bit more. I just wanted to. And then they flew above me and they disappeared. So I ran up to the takeoff again and I took off, but I was an hour late. And then I thought, like, I gave all I had. Like, I flew as fast as I could and I flew quite well. And I caught up with Perdi and Laurie. I caught up with
Wow.
Maxime Pinot, and we flew with Max and Ferdi all the way to the lake and back. And so there we were in a super good position. And actually, in the evening, we glided down and we left Max behind. He took a wrong decision and we kind of left him behind. So we're like, okay, now I was with Ferdi, my one of my best friend. Max Pinot was behind. Like, okay, we just left Max Pinot behind. This is it, And so we were pretty confident. But then I made a few mistakes the day after. I built some distance between me and the rest of the teams, and then it was really hard to catch up. And it was always playing catch up, and trying to catch up, and it just didn't work as I wanted to. But I had some amazing flights, and I really enjoyed it. But the timing always felt wrong. We arrived at Mont Blanc. The wind was blowing like hell. All those guys flew the day before all around it. We arrived. We had to hike everything, and then it was 4 days of hiking. And there I took the right decisions. When we were in Monte Rosa, in the south face of Monte Rosa, the wind was blowing super hard, like really strong. And I said, you know what? I'm just gonna take it easy. And Steve Bramfitt, no, first it was Steve. Steve said, "Hey Tom, are you sure you don't go to takeoff?" And I'm like, "No, man, it's too strong. I can see that the trees are going like crazy and stuff." And he took off and he broke his knee that day,
Yeah.
and he was quite seriously injured. And then it was the German. I'm really bad at with names,
Michael
who also.
Latcher, right? Michael Latcher.
No, it's maybe, I don't know, like a really nice guy. I feel so bad about not knowing his name anymore. But anyway, and he also had a crash and broke his hand, and on the same day, and I felt like this is it. I took the right decision not to fly, and those two guys are out of the race now. So I was gaining positions by only being super safe and just wait for basically for the others to crash, which is not a good thing to do. But they got in serious trouble, and and then the next day I flew 150k back into the group. I was really close to the guys in front, but it was too hard, and it was really nice. And the last day of the race, and for me that was one of the most beautiful finish. And I will end with this. It's I knew about a mountain hut because I had been there with my brother years ago in 2011. And so I knew about that mountain hut not far from the lake area. And so I flew 150k that day. And when I landed at the bottom, I remembered, okay, there's this hut up there. Still thought I could do it on time to go to the pass and fly down. But when I arrived on top, it was too late. It was almost 9 o'clock, and I couldn't go. So I walked down to the mountain hut, and I knocked at the door, and the woman opened the door, and I just said, "Do you remember me?" And she said, "Yes, I do, Thomas, right?" It was crazy.
No
And so I
way.
was like, "Yeah, yeah, well, X-Alps." She was following the X-Alps, so I think she kind of looked at the live tracking, but she remembered that we were there with my brother in 2011. And so she prepared a big piece of meat. It was 9. I decided to stop racing that day because it was no point of hiking down. It was like I
Yeah.
would have hiked all night to just come to the point where I would have landed next morning. So it was no point doing that. So I just sat there, ate, like had a beautiful steak, enjoy my evening, sat next to the fire, read a book. It was the last day, you know. I read a book. I went to sleep at 9:30, and I had a full night. In the morning, I woke up at 7. I had a real breakfast. I walked half an hour to a really nice takeoff. I waited half the morning for the wind to come up. The guys were in the back, but it was hard for them to catch up, you know, and they were quite far. And then I took off and I flew the last 3 hours of the race, just enjoying smooth conditions, no wind, beautiful thermals, and kind of making peace with the whole situation, you know, like, okay, I didn't have the race I wanted to have, but here I am. I enjoyed my last evening. I'm rested. I'm having beautiful conditions. I'm going to land next to my team. I'm in one piece. You know, I was happy. I was super happy. And then I landed
What a
after
beautiful
the end of the
end.
race next to the man. And that's the thing. It's like, that's kind of the moments that I missed, you know, from the previous X-Alps. Like at the time, I remember we would sometimes, all of us, we will be sitting inside a mountain hut, you know, like maybe 10 pilots of the X-Alps, you know. On the first days, we were always, and we would share, you know, stories, and okay, let's go to sleep, and tomorrow is another day. And but now there's a lot more pressure. People want to go faster. Everyone's pushing. You know, I'm going to tell you a story that it's so funny. Like we were, I think it was in 2009. I think we were in a mountain hut, and it was early in the morning. It was like 8 in the morning or something, and everyone gathered there. It was Alex Hofer, myself, Martin Müller. We were like a group of pilots, maybe the top 6, 7. Everyone was there. It was the second day, and then we were all having a apple saft. You know, it's like this apple juice, sparkling apple juice, with big glasses. And then comes the Colombian guy, Hugo Jimenez, and he comes inside the hut and looks at everyone, and you could feel he felt a little bit uncomfortable. He didn't really know what to do and stuff. And he goes to the bar and orders a beer, you know, because he thought that we were all drinking beers, you know. And so he comes with his beer and sit at the table and put his beer on the table like if it was normal, like if every one of us were drinking beer at 8 in the morning, you know. And then we all start laughing, and we're like, this is so good. And everyone laughs, and everyone was super chill about it. But it was like, you could tell this guy came from South America, you know, and he just wanted to, you know, to be part of the whole thing, but he didn't really know how to act on it. It was so funny. And so he had a bit of beer, and we all kind of shared some beers, and then we went off. We took off again and left. But yeah, this is those moments I cherish the most, you know, with the 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 feeling that the friends you make on the way, you know, the people you
Mm.
spend time with, the other athletes you spend time with, you go through very difficult times together, you support each other, you take care of each other. When you see someone going into a cloud, you try to, and I really love the spirit, and I think it's still there, and I think it's our responsibility also to keep it alive, you know, to keep this spirit
Yeah.
alive and to help each other and to share informations and stuff. And I know you are in this team too. Like we've always been sharing everything we know, and then the
Yeah.
best will win. You know, this is how I see things. You know, we share everything, and all the information's out there, and then the best will win. You know,
Yeah.
but not everyone thinks like that. You know, I've had some
Yeah,
experiences,
but it's
and
it's
and it's okay. You know,
for the most part, though, you're right. And one of the hardest decisions about not doing it was just missing out on that. As someone who's done the race, we know that there's a whole lot of special things, right? There's a lot of things that go in. It's the training and the team. And, for me, it's the places that you get, both mentally and physically, that you would never get just touring the Alps and flying. You get to these very
Sure.
special places that are, for me are going to be really hard to miss. But a lot of it is just the camaraderie and the getting to know people like you and all the other teams and athletes. And it's a very intense 12 days that leaves its mark. And, a lot of my, I don't know, trepidation with not doing it, because it was a hard decision to not do another one. There's all the obvious stuff that, the training and the time and the money and all the things that, are always tough, but a lot of it's just missing you guys, just not being a part of something so special. Ferdy's quite inspirational to me because he took 2019, I believe, off. Was it 2019 or 2017? I can't remember, but he always
19,
does well,
I think, yeah.
But he took the year off and then he came back, and I'm kind of hoping that he'll come back, because he's not doing this one too. I'm hoping he'll come back again. And
We hope you will come back. We will hope you will come back.
I'm thinking about it.
You should, because you will be back, I'm sure. I mean, this is the cool thing about it. It's like you can always come back.
Yeah, no, it's a really special family, I'm excited, so excited to watch you guys throw down again. And Tom, thanks for sharing these wonderful stories. My face is tired. I've been smiling so hard, but I appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me, man. I can see the time running. I'm like, okay, we talk too much. It's because I cannot stop talking. I'm sorry.
No,
but
it's
been a blast. Thank you so much for having me and for spreading the word and sharing with everyone else. I think it's always good to share our knowledge, and the cool thing is that the X-Alps will always be there. I think that there's a young generation coming behind us, with really super motivated athletes and really professional approaches and stuff, and we will see a lot more of those cool adventures, and also there are new races like the X-Rocks and races like new events and appearing here and there, and that's so cool to see that the whole world of BV flying and racing, and it's really booming at the moment.
It's really taking the sport to
there's a lot
wonderful
to do.
place. It's exciting to kind of I think of it as kind of the new frontier, but it's super exciting. It's been really exciting to watch you over the years, and man, stick with it. I'm glad you're in it again, and thanks, Tom. I appreciate it.
No, thank you so much, and we talk very soon. Then, all the best to you.
If you find the Cloud-Based Mayhem valuable, you can support it in a lot of different ways. You can give us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or however you get your podcast. That goes a long ways and helps spread the word. You can blog about it on your own website or share it on social media. You can talk about it on the way up to launch with your pilot friends. I know a lot of interesting conversations have happened that way. And of course, you can support us financially. This show does take a lot of time, a lot of editing, a lot of storage and music and all kinds of behind the scenes cost. So if you can support us financially, all we've ever asked for is $1 a show. And you can do that through a one-time donation through PayPal, or you can set up a subscription service that charges you for each show that comes out. We put a new show out every 2 weeks. So for example, if you did $1 a show and every 2 weeks, it'd be about $25 a year. So way cheaper than a magazine subscription, and it makes all of this possible. I do not want to fund this show with advertising or sponsors. We get asked about that pretty frequently, but for a whole bunch of different reasons, which I've said many times on the show, I don't want to do that. I don't like having that stuff at the front of the show. And I also want you to know that these are authentic conversations with real people, and these are just our opinions, but our opinions are not being skewed by sponsors or advertising dollars. I think that's a pretty toxic business model. So I hope you dig that. You can support us. If you go to cloudbasedmayhem.com, you can find the places to support. You can do it through patreon.com/cloudbasedmayhem. If you want a recurring subscription, you can also do that directly through the website. We've tried to make it really easy, and that will give you access to all the bonus material, little video casts that we do and extra little nuggets that we find in conversations that don't make it into the main show, but we feel like you should hear. We don't put any of that behind a paywall. If you can't afford to support us, then just let me know and I'll set you up with an account. Of course, that'll be lifetime, and hopefully you're being in a position someday to be able to support us. But You'll find all that on the website. All of you who have supported us or even joined our newsletter or bought Cloud-Based Mayhem merchandise, t-shirts or hats or anything, you should be all set up. You should have an account and you should be able to access all that bonus material now. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next show. Thank you.